Okay, welcome to a capital hungry update and breakdown of USDCAD. Before we start, we're going to review our previous breakdown, which is still active. We're just going to be looking at some of the events, some of the data reports and stuff we have going on this week that can possibly impact or change this analysis. We haven't broken out of our key areas to see potential buys, and we haven't broken out of previous low points to see long-term sells. We've been consolidating in this 100 pip range, and even to start the week, we are still playing within this range. So our analysis is still valid of seeing some potential downside if we have market optimism continue to hold and noticing the US dollar continue bearish as global equities are still in the greens to start the week and overnight so far. Asian markets were in the greens, Euro equities are in the greens. Dollar did have a bit of strength overnight, short term. We're just looking at the hourly dollar index chart here. We had some nice strong bullish candles, but it is still early in the week, and we want to zoom out and look at like the daily on the dollar index, which is still fairly bearish and has potential to have some more downside if we have market optimism. Also, before we would have any potential upside or market fear, I would also ideally like to see more of this seller's wick range area filled and getting some of this bullish broken market structure tested. You can see coming here as we have this price squeeze out and this large range created before we rejected at this previous historical supply point to the left from September 2016 area. I would like to get some of this range filled even before seeing price start to turn potentially bullish if we do have continued market fear. Because even though we have had this snapback in price, we are still on the higher time frames, very bullish in market structure, right? Meaning like if we zoom out here, sorry, my screen just froze for a second. Very bullish higher time frames. We had this break of this bearish market structure and this almost a bullish flag sort of breakout once we had liquidity generated. We still do, if we have mass market fear and lockdowns confirmed around the world, which would also lead to oil heavily dropping. Oil's been staying fairly solid above $35 a barrel in the $40 a barrel range, which of course keeps the Canadian dollar strong and supports the global smart money sentiment. We of course know that if oil drops below $25 a barrel, this is extremely negative for world economies, as pretty much all energy companies, all oil energy companies would be toast because they wouldn't be able to make a profit, right? So oil has been heavily propped up to be above $25 a barrel for a reason. That's why we saw all these different politicians in countries talking about production cuts, talking about different ways oil demand is coming back up and trying to prop up the price. So that's another catalyst we want to watch for as well, is if we have another lockdown and just lockdowns continue around the world. From a micro perspective, talking about just us types of working class people who go to work every day, use your vehicle, you have micro consumption of oil go down. And from a macro perspective of how oil is used in industry, factory, etc. around the world, you have a heavy decrease in the demand for oil and a heavy oversupply, and overstock continue to build up, and price of crude oil would drop, which would of course devalue and decrease the value of the Canadian dollar. And that market fear would have us hold this bullish market structure, remain above some of these key price sensitivity areas on the monthly, still remain just retesting market structure from a bullish perspective here, possibly creating a double bottom on an intraday perspective and creating a deeper monthly wick. And then when that market fear comes in, we would just have more confirms of filling this upside bullish wick. And especially from that and possibly breaking this previous historical high point as well, if we have those lockdowns, right? So this is more of the fear route. I would only see UCAD breaking this bullish market structure if we had oil go back above into the 50s and 60s, as well as a global economic rebound. And then from a macro perspective, we could see more of this upside move start to get corrected and see that downside, see that shift into a bearish market structure, sorry. But that's just me talking from a macro perspective, just road mapping potential ideas. understanding what we would see printed out technically in front of us if we had very optimistic markets, and understanding if we go into mass fear mode, what is going to be printed out. So when it starts to happen in front of our eyes, we already are well aware of what's going on, right? So that's all I'm doing there. We want to zoom in at what's happening here and what potential trade ideas we can take advantage of, right? So what I'm looking at is the fact that oil is still fairly strong. Like right now, it is literally at, one second here, $39 a barrel, 80 cents, still holding in the 40s, right? Which is still giving the Canadian dollar some strength. The US dollar on the daily, when we're looking at it, is still fairly bearish. Global equities overnight were a lot more solid and still holding some optimism. I do see the potential for us to have some downside on UCAD if we don't break key areas of interest we already have predetermined and see those sell plays unless we start to break our previous analysis. So pretty much this is still standing. I would only see safe upside above 1.3645. I just want to go down and quickly scan the weekly and see how last week closed, as well as see how some of the previous daily candles closed, to see if anything's showing me anything different, right? Not much different. Very weak candle. Like I know we had a bullish close last week, but it wasn't anything significant. A very small candle. We had a bearish engulfing close previously. Overall, we have this sell play move from where we had this liquidity generated. The sell play was about 730 pips. We had some of this upside correction, about a 50% correction. It looks like we can come visit some of these lows and fill that monthly wick, as we do have current optimism and no confirms of lockdown just yet. So weekly still enforcing what we're seeing from previous analysis and just from last week. Daily, same idea. A lot of the upside looked fairly corrective. We're not breaking bearish market structure. It really looks like on the daily, once we break this price sensitivity point here, we have an easy meltdown range to that previous low, where then we can potentially create a potential double bottom. But still, that's like 200 pips on an intraday perspective, technically, to correct this upside bullish candle play and continue with the trend to revisit that low, fill that monthly wick if we have that continued optimism, and then see what happens from that point. If we have continued optimism, we'll do a pullback and dig deeper. If we have more market fear come in at that play and buyers jump in, we'll have more impulsive candles and start breaking bearish market structure as well to correct more of this downside move, right? And go back to fill that monthly bullish wick range, our fear route. But right now, I don't see too much to support the fear route. I'm looking very bearish on most time frames. With that being said, what I just wanted to note last week was our analysis was looking for a break above 1.355. I'll pull back to this medium-term zone and then start to sell down the ranges. What I want to note is that price failed to break previous low because we have a lot of fundamental indecision, creating technical consolidations and buyers and sellers fighting in the market, right? You're having, these are some great plays, but if you don't cash out, pretty much on an intraday perspective, we've been stuck in this range. And you've noticed this on other US dollar pairs as well, like Euro USD. Even though Euro USD has had some nice upside moves that we've predicted and called between the levels, it's still been fairly stuck in a consolidation, for example, when you're really zoomed out looking at it, right? Right? It's still been stuck in this type of consolidation for a few weeks now, where we had these previous beautiful bullish trending markets, but that's just the market waves. We're generating liquidity for another impulsive move. And right now I'm seeing US dollar weakness. So not right now currently. I'm going to send a market update after London close later to see what potential trade ideas we can zoom into once I see how New York starts to run and how last night ran. But I just mean overall current market sentiment is still fairly optimistic. We're still seeing the US dollar is weak. Euro USD is still holding that bullish higher time frame market structure. USDCAD overall, when you zoom out, still fairly bearish structure with these impulsive sellers moves and no full correction of this downside play. And really, if we break below 1.3500, it's an easy meltdown down the ranges. I would only see safe buys at this point above 1.3645. It looked like we were getting some more market fear last week as we failed to break this previous low point. But look, the exact same thing happened. Yes, we failed to break the previous low, showing us some sellers exhaustion at that period in time. And then you get a huge candle that fully corrected that downside move as well. So, okay, we're getting some intraday buyers in the market. But look, it rejects at the exact same previous intraday highs, and we didn't even come to peak that last previous high yet by any means. Okay, that's why I would only start looking for safe buys, maybe really above this previous high in 1.3645. And we can see that if we have the market fear and if we break above this price sensitivity point to the left, we're going to fully correct this downside move and have that bullish market structure. But we're just in that point of technical and fundamental indecision, and buyers and sellers in that intraday fight, right? So we don't have any clean macro moves yet. But what I see is if we have mass optimism, safe sells below 1.35. If we have market fear, safe buys above 1.3645. Other than that, we are just waiting for price action confirms and more headlines and data to develop throughout the week. As I don't want to tell you guys to start jumping in something yet when I don't personally see something probable yet, right? Some days, some weeks, there might not be any trades. Some months, there might not be any clean trades. But the whole point is looking for high probability trades where you do have your confirms, you have your fundamental one-sided volatility, you have your technical confirms lined up, right? Because these trades that you patiently wait for, those are the ones that end up paying out and actually helping you to grow and develop your account. Chasing trades every single day just to chase trades doesn't really do anything for anybody, right? So we have to switch into the mindset of accepting what the market is doing and showing us right in front of our eyes and just creating high probability trade ideas off that, right? For example, if UCAD failed to break this low, and last week we also broke above 1.3645, right? And at the same time, the US dollar index, the daily candle closed like a bullish engulfing, even if it closed at like peaked above here to like 96.7. We set a nice bullish engulfing close, signaling some technical support here, some US dollar strength. We see that. And at the same time, we see Euro USD break a low point, like break these previous lows. I'd be like, hey, guys, this week, it looks like we're getting more into a fear sentiment. US dollar strength looks, the US dollar looks a lot stronger. Equities are falling off their highs. It looks like sellers technically on Euro USD are gaining some more speed. On USDCAD, we can see we failed to break the previous low, and we're breaking above some key, like we're breaking above previous intraday highs and key level. It looks like we'll have a continuation of some US dollar strength, but we didn't get any clean breaks of previous lows. We didn't get any clean breaks of previous intraday highs last week. We just had this technical consolidation and fundamental indecision. So you get what I'm saying? You guys know when there's a clean one-sided trade, I'll be the first to tell you UCAD is a sick buy from this level, or EU is a solid sell from this level. But we are in this area on the higher time frames for a lot of these pairs where we're at very key decision points, and fundamentally as well. So I'm just waiting for more of that one-sided volatility. Pretty much I'm waiting to see if we're going to have continued lockdowns or not. If not, we're going to be running a more optimistic route. US CPI on Tuesday, which we will review. Bank of Canada monetary policy, Canada interest rate on Wednesday. So that's going to be big if they bring a dovish sentiment or a hawkish sentiment. If they signal weakness or signal recovery or strength, we will look at that closer to Wednesday as well. Somebody just remind me overnight too, just in case I don't. I probably will, but just in case. Da, 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 da. So that's big. CAD interest rate stuff and the monetary. CAD CPI is also important as well on Wednesday. CPI is always important, consumer inflation figures. And then U.S. initial jobless claims, a lot of that is priced in, has minimal impact, but the retail sales is important as well, U.S. retail sales. So a lot of data this week as well in the market that can potentially start to give us some one-sided volatility. But yeah, UCAD, because we're in this intraday range, I would take safe buys above 1.3645 or honestly safe sells below 1.355 still as well. And because that's still our main bias from last week, safe sells below here and below this previous low point. If we finally smash below this order block area that was created and where we had this previous low peaked and we failed to break last week, you know we're going to melt down to the key level and range where I know it's in the middle of a key level, but that's still like 90 to 100 pips, right? So once I clean up my alerts, I'll probably set an alert at this low point as well. Okay, so any questions about USDCAD? It has rejected resistance 3 times. Yeah, Kapil, but that's a guess, right? It's 50-50. Market can only go up or down. It's also rejected the previous low 2-3 times now as well. And then if you have a fundamental catalyst like Trump says, you know what, we have no choice. We have to lock down the US, that resistance is gonna be melted like butter. You get what I'm saying? So exactly, that's why it's best to wait for the confirms to see if we actually do break lower. Because if you wait for the confirms and we fail to break the high and we have continued market optimism and you bust this low, you can look for an easy entry of a break and retest or just entering on a structure retest on the lower time frames. And that's a nice 100 pip range, right? And most likely we're going to go visit the lower levels to 1.33100. Same type of idea. If we have that market fear and we have those lockdowns and we have a break and retest above 1.36, like you're gonna correct these downside moves here, and you can take advantage of those waves, right? But right now, you can't tell me. You guys can tell who is really from just last week. Like we're rejecting on a dime at the low points. We're rejecting on a dime at the intraday high points. What's your monthly view? That was at the start of the webinar. Like we went from the monthly chart down. If you just joined, you could just replay this, like when it's saved and sent over to Vimeo. It's uploaded to Vimeo. Any questions about what happened with the UCAD last week? The analysis from last, like this is what our analysis was last week. We're pretty much continuing this as we haven't broken this analysis, right? We were looking for a pullback in sells and safe sells below a break and retest of the previous low. But we stopped there on a dime and we didn't break our sell area yet either. You guys get what I'm saying? So I don't have much to change, but we are showing some technical indecision. It's the same analysis though, pretty much. So you guys can watch this breakdown and you got this one as just a refresher for this week, right? This one, we were talking about a lot of the events and stuff we have this week as well. It was looking like we're going to get a beautiful, like it was going beautiful. Like we had our pullback. We got beautiful rejections intraday. We were selling down. We had a nice meltdown below our key level, but like, and then we were looking to continue at a break and retest of the previous low point and this consolidation and price sensitivity area, but it just stopped there on a dime. And then this, of course, is the 4-hour chart, right? You have like at least 16 hours worth of fresh support being created at the previous low. It's not being created down here. It's not being created up here. It's being created right exactly at the previous low, telling us there's not enough seller's order flow to break that point, and we don't have that one-sided fundamental volatility. And then same thing to the upside, right? buyers exhausted right at the previous intraday high. Then you had hours of intraday exhaustion and not enough buyer orders or fundamental one-sided volatility of market fear for buyers to continue this, as oil's still holding at like $39, $40 a barrel, and the market's fairly mixed, right? Headlines are fairly mixed as well. You have some countries saying the pandemic is getting worse, and then you have countries like Germany overnight saying, no, actually everything's looking a lot better than before, right? Every politician or country is going to be saying whatever best fits their bias or fits whatever their agenda is. But we have to wait for the hard facts around the lockdown. You get what I'm saying? Since our main bias was the sells and we do have a bunch of rejections and overall higher time frames are bearish, I do see potentials for sells below just 1.355 instead of waiting for the break of that previous low, just because that is our main bias and we are seeing the US dollar fairly weak so far. Safer sells, of course, would be below this previous low point. We are looking to fill the monthly wick range, the monthly wick fill range area, which would be, of course, revisiting these lows. Safe buys will only be above 1.3645. With the US dollar gaining strength and confirms of market fear, such as the equities falling off and like dollar breaking above. This is the dollar on the daily. Dollar at least coming to test 97 or getting a bullish engulfing close that engulfs these last like 5 days of bearish market structure and like starts to show us that it's going to break out and correct more of this downside move because dollar is very bearish as well. Let's freeze. Yeah, you guys saw that on the daily though. It's bearish right now. We reviewed the events, but just quickly check. We have those Fed speakers, no speakers for CAD. Actually, yes, during the Bank of Canada stuff in the middle of the week, but I'm just talking about outside of that. No, okay. All right. We'll keep these key level price lows off for now, but once I do another breakdown, I'm going to delete all these alerts and just put them fresh again because some of these are old and I have to go through and clean these up still.